How do you use stories to communicate with power and impact? Welcome to Tea at Taxevity, where you get insights from insiders who make life better, our many friends and clients. My name is Pramod Sharma, and our guest today is Shannon Leahy. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, Pramod. Hi, everyone.
What do you do when you're not being interviewed?
I'm a writer by trade, so I have a small communications company here in Toronto called Raystorm Communications. And for a number of years, longer than I'll admit, I have written newspaper and magazine articles, and then have had the privilege of interviewing hundreds of people across Canada as a travel writer. Since 2008, when so many of our worlds kind of melted, I started teaching storytelling because I had one of those 3 a.m. recognitions that I have been chasing stories and finding stories for decades.
Okay, and stories is what we are talking about, which makes you an ideal guest. Now, when did you start using stories yourself?
When I think of growing up, I grew up in a little town on the snowy shores of Lake Superior, Thunder Bay, Ontario. And my father would hold court at our dining room table. And it was a large Irish family. And if you didn't come to that dinner table with a story to tell, you really didn't have a place at that table.
Really?
Stories were kind of currency, were how you shared your day, how smart you were possibly. And I mean, the competition was stiff. I had 4 other siblings. All of them were fierce storytellers. And that's how I learned to navigate the world. And I discovered that I'm not the only person who uses storytelling to figure out who we are in the world.
That's fascinating, and that sounds like you'd have some very interesting conversations.
Oh yes, religion, politics, boyfriends, girlfriends, it was wild. So what amazed me is as a young adult going into the workplace, storytelling vanished. And instead it was the cult of data, facts, and figures. And I had to hide away my stories and who I was and go with the facts. And it was difficult.
And I'm from that cult of data, facts, and figures, being an actuary. But it does seem that storytelling is becoming a popular topic these days. Are you finding the same?
Oh, you're very gracious to call it a topic. A lot of people would call it a trend, or it's trendy. In journalism circles, we have a joke that a trend is ultimately 3 journalists who decide something's cool, and then it becomes a trend. So, but I agree with you. Storytelling is a bit of a buzzword, business storytelling. I know up in the civil service now in Ottawa, they're teaching storytelling. Ultimately, storytelling is putting a lot of information in narrative form. So it's not anti-data, it's not anti-facts, it's not anti-figures, it's not anti-engineer or the rational mind. Ultimately, storytelling is a way when you have such little time to communicate, to connect, to share your ideas, to actually have people be willing to listen to you, to pay attention. And attention is rooted in the word attending to memory.
Okay.
Data doesn't inspire attention. As opposed to a story, something in a narrative form can communicate a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I'll say even wisdom, in an extremely short amount of time.
I didn't see stories being used very much in the business world, and now more and more of them are being used. What do you think caused the interest in stories, that resurgence?
I think that we're coming to the end of the information age. And that's not a new thought, according to me, or an opinion. And I'm a big fan of Rolf Jensen, who's a European futurist. He's a man who gets paid to study the future, right? Only in Europe. It's wonderful. And he talked about in 1996 that we were coming to the end of the information age and we were going to be moving into a dream society. And he predicted that the highest paid people, so listen up, of the first half of the 21st century, which is now, will be the storyteller. So what he saw, which I believe is where we're at, is we are, I will say, dying in information. We're overwhelmed by information. And now we have the great hunger called, what does it all mean? So Steve Jobs and Apple, of course, there's a story behind that brand storytelling. But even we've evolved past that, where we simply don't have time to think. And I'm not being facetious when I say that, is we forget that when we present data, facts, and figures, people are interpreting that data as, is this right? Is this wrong? Do I agree or do I disagree?
Okay.
And that's it.
When a story is being told, then the speaker is interpreting the data, facts, and figures for the audience. And that can lead to biases, can it not?
Well, I would think of a speaker, so we'll use the example of a speaker then, who does have facts and figures and stats to present. My view is that, just like in journalism, don't lead with the data, facts, and figures.
Okay.
When you show up, actually show up. And the way that you can show people who you are is through a story. And I don't mean to overshare or be emotional, the E word. But in this day and age, we don't have time to build a relationship so I feel, and we forget that trust is a feeling.
Okay.
So if a speaker goes up and says, I am trustworthy, I am a good CEO, I have an open door policy.
It probably means the opposite.
Well, there are people in the audience doing whatever, right? But if he opens with, say, a humility story or a values and action story, something that shows him that he's human too, that I am like you, even if I am wearing a $3,000 suit and I'm about to give the facts and figures of layoffs, there is a kind of communion, a kind of communication where people see him and see him not as special but as similar. And that's when people are willing to be influenced. Now, when I say influenced, I mean accessing emotion that's going to be at play anyway. Channel it in a positive way.
Okay. Then where is the time for the boring data, facts, and figures? Do you start off with a story, insert that stuff, and then end off with a story? Or what's the strategy? Because sometimes you do have to have facts.
Absolutely. And I mean, I still do write for newspapers and magazines. Absolutely, we need facts, because otherwise it's just my opinion, right?
Yes.
We need that. I think what it is it's just like my mother taught me. I have a feeling there's a number of mothers who teach this. It's about balance and moderation. Is if you go up as a speaker and you, pardon me, hide behind PowerPoint slides and pie charts and graphs, it's too much information too soon. There's no context, there's no frame. Like in the movies, right? Which of course are stories. And by the way, movies are booming.
Right.
You take the frame is this.
Yes.
Right? You were providing a kind of meaning. So I would say, yes, there's always a room for facts and preferably sexy stats, but show who you are first. Give some kind of narrative bridge, and then start introducing, unpacking your proof or your evidence. Ultimately, a story is an invitation into the world that you see.
Okay.
Because what I find is that the people who are open to storytelling, who are inquisitive about storytelling, are usually people who have an idea or have a point of view or an insight that they believe if they shared with, let's say, the world, if they shared with others, we would all benefit.
Sometimes I feel that stories have an aspect which can be seen as manipulative. But you're saying that generally people have something of value to say, and they're simply not out there to lead the audience to a particular way of believing.
Well, we've all seen people go up and tell stories that almost are like candy, right? They, as you listen to them, it's like eating a bag of chips, right? Or candy, sugar or salt. And afterwards, you're not particularly moved, and you and I talk about what we're going to eat for lunch afterwards. Right? It's polished, it's tight. But ultimately, the true storytellers, the people who actually have the courage, which is to be wholehearted and show up, it's because they believe. And you know when you are standing in front of someone who believes. Like enthusiasm cannot be faked. I think authenticity, I know that's becoming a trendy word, can't be faked. You know when someone is daring greatly.
Okay, I appreciate what you've said because I've been a little skeptical about
Mm.
the whole topic of storytelling because I think of Dr. Seuss and kid stories
Mm.
and they're entertaining, but it almost seems like a trick where you are trying to get people to believe certain things based on the power of the story rather than on the power of the facts. But now I understand what you're saying and it makes a lot of sense. Now, what techniques can we use to improve the way that we tell our stories?
Can I just comment on about Dr. Seuss? I can't resist.
Okay.
Is that all right?
We've never had anyone talk about Dr. Seuss
Okay,
on
so
this
there
series
we
before.
go. So let me tell you a story. No, I'm joking.
Does
Because
it rhyme?
I love that because when people hear the word storyteller, and I struggle with the word storyteller. You know, I'm a
Mm-hmm.
writer by trade, and even the word writer intimidates me because there's so many beautiful writers out there.
Mm-hmm.
But when people hear the word storytellers, I'm often asked, like, oh, do you work at a library? Like, do you sit around and read books to children?
Yes,
And
yes.
that's
Mm-hmm.
right. And I didn't want to use that word. So that's very common. And that's okay. And often I think when you feel skeptical about it, again, it's this Western view that if you put some of your information in narrative form, you're being emotional and therefore rational is they're at odds, right? So when
Okay.
reason is up, emotion is down. Right? When emotion is up, reason is down. I'm pretty sure I messed that up, but it's not at odds. Ultimately, storytelling is accessing emotion that is already at play.
Okay. Okay, that makes me feel good too.
Okay,
Thanks, Dr. Seuss.
you're welcome.
Now, what can we do to improve the way we tell our stories?
Ways that you can improve your storytelling skills or to
Yes.
is I call it there's the air war and then there's the ground war. So there's the skill set, which of course
Mm-hmm.
we all want, like tell what's the parts of a story and the conflict and the characters.
Right.
And yet I really start with the mindset. And the reason why when clients ask me questions like that, particularly those who are quite analytical and
Me.
don't consider themselves creative and all these other labels that none of them are true, by the way. um, it takes tremendous courage, and I don't mean this as a toot toot to myself. It takes tremendous courage to be willing to speak and share a story. That's part of the process. Be-
Okay.
because you feel as if you're risking credibility. So accept that it's going to feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Number two is that tell a story with a point. And I know it's like, well, of course, but your story does need to support, get ready, your message and your facts and arguments. You don't ever tell a
Okay.
story that you don't believe in as well.
Okay, and does the story have to be yours? Because I've heard some speakers who use the same story and
Mm,
they make it sound like it happened to them, but it couldn't have because they're different people saying the same thing.
yeah, those aren't my storytellers. If you're that kind of storyteller, don't come to me. No, I don't like to lead with the don'ts, but don't lie. um, don't lie. It's
Mm-hmm.
just it's not a kind of karma that you want. It doesn't. I believe stories change the world, and if you're going out there and you're lying, because that's what it is,
Mm-hmm.
it's not good, and it will come back to you. Um, I think you can embellish.
Okay.
I mean, my father, never let the facts get in the way of a good story, sweetheart. But tell a story that you believe in. Tell a story that if your parents or your son was in the audience, they'd be proud of you.
Okay, and that makes a lot of sense. Are there any other points you'd like to make about storytelling?
I believe storytelling as a communication tool, whether in the boardroom or the bedrooms, it's inevitable. This is where we're heading because we are, I think, as a society, um, we're seeking meaning, and I don't mean meaning with a capital M, but we know the limits of the information age, right? Of
Okay.
Google and say Amazon and all the rest. But now we're looking for speakers who can touch us, who can invite us into a better future. Because I don't know about you, but have you had enough bad news?
Yes. I like good news a lot
Yeah.
more.
Are you ready to be invited into a brighter future, to listen to speakers who actually have a vision that is one that you're invited into and you want to be part of?
Yeah, that's appealing.
Right, that's where I believe we're heading, and as I said to you, I know earlier, is I mean, I believe it so much, it's on my business card. Stories change the world. And when I see the clients I work with, some of them are cancer coaches, some of them are methadone, they work in methadone, some of them are authors. And when they come out and start sharing stories, they grow, and they're amazed by the ripple effect that they have. So, hey, if you want to change the world, tell your story.
Start with stories. Okay, now what's the best way for people to reach you?
Oh, I'm at Raystorm Communications, and Raystorm, actually my grandfather's name was Ray, so that's in there. So it's RAY, Storm Communications with an S, nice mouthful.com, and I'm always happy to hear from people.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing your stories and information with us.
Thanks, Pramod. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Tea at Taxevity. The Taxevity Insurance Advisory helps you understand insurance and bridges gaps in your coverage. There's no premium for peace of mind. How healthy is your insurance?